Welcome to Wood Library Spotlight On program. This month we're shining our spotlight on Frank Asch, the author and illustrator of over 80 books for children. And many of those books, as you might be able to see from behind me, are about a bear. So let's start off with one of my favorites, and then we'll get into doing some crafts and other activities together. So our first book is called Sand Cake. It's a Frank Asch bear story. This one was published in 1978, so it's an old book, but it's still a goodie. And it's published by Parents Magazine. One summer day, the bear family went to the beach where they swam and sunned themselves on a blanket. Now, after a while, Baby Bear said he felt like doing something else. "If I made you a cake, will you eat it?" he asked Papa Bear. "Sure," said Papa Bear. "If you use flour, milk, and eggs, I will be happy to eat your cake." Well, Baby Bear looked around. All he could see was sand and water for miles. "How can I find flour and milk and eggs at the beach?" asked Baby Bear. "Oh, that's easy," said Papa Bear. "Eggs come from a chicken, milk comes from a cow, and flour comes from wheat." "Well, if it's so easy," said Baby Bear, "then you make a cake with flour and milk and eggs, and I will eat it." "Okay," said Papa Bear, "I will." And he got up and went down to the water's edge. He picked up a stick that had washed up on the beach. And with the stick, he drew a chicken in the wet sand. And under the chicken, he drew an egg. Then he scooped up the egg and put it in Baby Bear's bucket. Then he drew some wheat and ground it up in his hands to make the flour. He added the flour to the eggs in the bucket. Next, he drew a cow, and under the cow, a pail of milk. Well, actually, it looks like a bottle to me. He poured the milk into the bucket with the eggs and the flour, and on all of this, he sprinkled some salt from the sea. Then Papa Bear drew an oven, and where the oven door was, he dug a hole and buried the bucket. "Come on," he said to Baby Bear, "let's go for a swim. By the time we come back, the cake will be ready for you to eat." Now, all the time Baby Bear was swimming, he kept wondering, how will I ever be able to eat that cake? Well, when they came out of the water, Papa Bear dug up the bucket and turned it upside down on the beach. He said the cake was done. "Well now," said Papa Bear, "are you going to eat the nice cake I made for you?" "Do you think you will?" "Let's see." "Sure," said Baby Bear. And he picked up a stick and drew a picture of himself around the cake. "Here I am, and I have eaten the cake. See, it's in my stomach." Papa Bear laughed and gave Baby Bear a great big hug. "Now I'm hungry too," he said. "Well, then you can both have some of my cake," said Mama Bear, and she opened the picnic basket. "I made mine with real flour, milk, and eggs. And you know, it was delicious." So that's Sand Cake by Frank Asch. Well, since Frank Asch writes so many books about bears, I thought we could make ourselves a bear mask. So let's take a look. If you got one of our take and make bags from the library, in it you'll find a brown pattern for a bear mask. So what I want you to do is cut it out. Cut all around the outside lines. We're going to put some holes at the side and put some string through it to make a mask. So you'll also need to be cutting out those eyes. And those are probably things that your mom or dad will do for you because that gets a little tricky. So go ahead and cut that out, and I'll be back in a minute, all ready to put it together. now that mine is all cut out, I'm ready to turn it into a mask. In your bag, you have a little plastic Ziploc bag that has some of the other materials we'll be needing for our programs. But in there are 2 pieces of yarn. One is a little bit longer than the other, so you might want to measure and see which one is the longest. Take them out and stretch them out, and you'll see one is longer than the other. And the long one is the one you want for this project. So pull it out. Also in your bag, you'll have a couple of what are called gummed reinforcements. They put them around the holes on the sides of notebook paper, but we're going to use them on our mask. If you don't have these, you can also use just a piece of Scotch tape. I put some Scotch tape on the back of mine right where the holes are, or where we're going to be putting holes in order to tie the string. If you have a hole punch, you can punch those holes right now. Just like that. And if you want to use the gummed reinforcements, just so that the yarn won't rip out, you can just peel those off and put those around each side, just like that. Almost look like earrings from the back, don't they? So just like that on the back side. And then take your long piece of yarn, and you're going to want to cut it in half. So put the 2 ends together, stretch it out, and where that loop is, get some scissors again and just cut it into 2. And then you're just going to tie it through the hole, 1 piece on each side. I usually do a double knot, not too tightly, because I don't want to rip anything, but just so it's in place. So there's one side tied, and do the same on the other side. If you have some long parts hanging off of your knot, you can trim those, but I don't think it really matters. So there's mine tied on both sides. And now I can put this on my face. Whoop. And I can be bare too. Are you ready for another story? Before we do, you might want to look in your bag from the library and see something that isn't going to be used in a craft project. There's a bag of popcorn in there, so you can open that up and snack on that while we have our next story, which is called Popcorn. This is a Frank Asch bear story, and it's kind of timely because, well, they're getting dressed up in costumes. One fall night, Mama and Papa Bear went to a Halloween party and left Sam home alone. Take good care of the house and we'll bring you a present. So he called up his friends and invited them to his house for his own Halloween party. Wear a costume and bring something good to eat, he told each one. And while he waited for his friends to arrive, he made himself a costume. Now the first to arrive was Betty. I brought some popcorn for the party, she said. The second to arrive was Billy. He was dressed as a king. And you know, he brought popcorn too. Bernie, Bonnie, and Buster also brought popcorn. In fact, everyone brought popcorn. Well, the party was lots of fun. And when Betty said, "Hey, let's pop all that popcorn," everyone thought it was a good idea. So with some help from his friends, Sam lifted Mama Bear's great big kettle onto the kitchen stove and poured in all the popcorn. He added some oil and salt and turned on the stove. And soon it began to pop. Pop, pop, pop. There was so much popcorn, it quickly filled the kettle and spilled out onto the floor. There was so much popcorn, it filled the whole kitchen. It spilled out into the living room, and it filled all the rooms downstairs and started creeping up the stairs. There was so much popcorn, it filled the whole house. Can you see? That's inside the house. We can't see anybody. We can only see their speech bubbles. What happened? Somebody said. Who turned out the lights? Where did everybody go? Some party. Get me out of here. Help! Well, everyone wanted to go home, but Sam said, no, you've got to stay and help me get rid of all this popcorn, or I'll be in big trouble. So, munch, crunch, munch, crunch, munch, crunch, munch, crunch, gulp. They ate and 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 ate until all the popcorn was gone. I don't care if I ever see another piece of popcorn in my whole life, said Buster. I feel like my stomach is going to burst, said Betty. Mine too, said Bobby. Sam felt the sickest of all. He said goodnight to his friends, finished cleaning up, and went to bed. Later that night, Mama and Papa Bear came home. Wake up, they said. We brought you a present. What is it? Asked Sam. Popcorn, they replied. How do you think Sam felt? I'm not sure he's wanted it. In this story, you can probably tell that Sam, this bear, is a little bit older than probably you are because he's able to be left home alone, and he's also able to use the stove. That's something that young kids are usually able to do. That was a lot of popcorn. Well, we're going to play a little bit with popcorn, unpopped popcorn. So in your bag of materials, you'll have a bag full of popcorn, and we won't use all of it. We will use some of it. There's also going to be a sheet in there that has some popcorn boxes on it with numbers. So I'm going to direct my camera down, and we're going to play a little game of how many kernels go in each bucket. So take your sheet that has the popcorn buckets on it, take your bag of popcorn kernels, and dump them right along the edge. As I said, you're going to have more than you need. But we're going to see how good you are with counting. So point to one of the buckets, doesn't matter which one. I'm going to start with this one right in the middle. Do you know what that number is? Did you say 5? That's right. So I'm going to go and get 5 kernels and put them on that bucket. So here comes 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Go put them all around that number. So I'm all done with that one. So I'm going to close my eyes and pick another bucket and see which one. Oh, this one. This will be easy. What number do you see there? That's right. So I'm only going to take 1 popcorn kernel and put it right in that bucket. Let's do one more, and then you can do this on your own. So let's see if I can find another one to choose. Close my eyes and go here. And that one has a number 3 on it. So I'm going to pick 1, 2, 3 kernels of popcorn and put them on that bucket. And you can continue playing that over and over again, just to practice, first of all, your fine motor skills of picking up pieces of popcorn, recognizing a number, and counting to have as many pieces as you find on that number. So that's, let's play with the kernels. Did you have fun playing with your popcorn kernels? I bet you had even more fun eating those popcorn kernels once they were popped. Our next story is called Just Like Daddy. And it looks like this little bear and his dad are gonna go do some fishing. Do you like to go fishing? When I got up this morning, I yawned a big yawn. Go ahead, you can yawn. Just like Daddy. I washed my face, got dressed, and had a big breakfast. Just like Daddy. Then I put on my coat and my boots. Just like Daddy. And we all went fishing. Mommy, Daddy, and me. On the way, I picked a flower and gave it to my mother. Just like Daddy. When we got to the lake, I put a big worm on my hook. Just like Daddy. And all day we fished and fished, and I caught a big fish. Just like Mommy. Do you see what Daddy caught? He caught a little fish, didn't he? But they cooked the fish, all 3 of them, and had them for supper. And you know, I'm sure they were delicious. I call this project Let's Go Fishing. For it, you're going to need the chopstick that was in your bag. And if you don't have a chopstick around, if you're doing this on your own at home, just go out and get a regular old stick. I know the first time I ever went fishing, I did it with a stick that I found along the beach and some string and a hook. We're going to use something like this. You're going to use that other piece of yarn that was in your bag. You're going to want to have the 3 pipe cleaner pieces that are in your bag. These are full-size ones that are cut in half, and I gave everybody 3 colors because we're going to turn those into fish. And also in your bag is a magnet. It's on a sticky glue dot because we're going to be putting that on the end of our string. And I thought that was the easiest way to do it. And then one other thing that's in your bag that you're going to need, I punched out a brown cardstock circle. If I put it down here like that, that we're going to use when we're attaching the magnet because we don't want it to stay sticky. So the first thing you're going to want to do is take your chopstick, that's going to be your fishing pole, and tie one end of the string around, I think, the pointy end, and just tie it in a double knot. Maybe Mom or Dad could hold the stick while you tie it on there. So that's how mine is. If you feel that it's too loose, you can put a little bit of tape on there. Then stretch out your string and take your magnet that's on the glue dot, and you're going to pull the paper part away, and the sticky glue dot should stick onto the magnet. Just rip it right off. I don't know if you can tell that, but it's shiny that you see on there is the glue And then just put the other end of your string right on there, like that. And take that punch circle and stick that right over on top. That way, it won't stick to anything else. If you want to trim off your ends, you can do that, but it's not necessary. And that's your fishing pole. Now, if we're going to go fishing, we need some fish. So take your 3 pipe cleaners. We'll do this one at a time. You're going to take one of them, fold it sort of in half, so it overlaps a little bit like that, and then just twist those to make the tail. I'd like to twist it about twice. And there's my fish. Do that with each one of them. Fold it in half. Twist the tails. And there's another fish. And one more. Fold it in half. Twist the tails. And just shape it so that, I don't know if that one will show up so much, but there are 3 fish swimming in my lake. And then you can just take your fishing pole and see if you can catch one of those fish. And I did. Do you know why I was able to catch that fish? It's because pipe cleaners have metal inside of them. And the metal is attracted to the magnet. So you can catch all of your fish. If you have more pipe cleaners at home, you can go fishing all day long. And there are my 3 fish. One for Mama Bear, one for Papa Bear, and one for me. What a delicious dinner. Well, we have one more story written by Frank Asch that we're going to share today. This one is called Bear Shadow. One day, Bear went down to the pond with his fishing pole and a big can of worms. While he was putting a worm on his hook, he looked down and he saw a big fish. "I'm going to catch that fish," thought Bear to himself. But when Bear stood up to throw his line in the water, his shadow scared the big fish away. "Go away, Shadow," cried Bear. But Bear's shadow would not go away. "Okay," said Bear, "if you won't go on your own, then I'll just have to get rid of you myself." So he put down his fishing pole and he began to run. He ran around the pond, and when he got to the other side, he kept on running. He ran through a field of flowers, jumped over a brook, and hid behind a tree. "Good," thought Bear. "Now Shadow can't find me." I don't even know if you can see him. Do you see him blend in? Yeah. But Bear was wrong. When he stepped out from behind the tree, the first thing he saw was Shadow. Nearby was a cliff. Bear walked over to the cliff and looked up. "I'll climb so high, Shadow won't be able to follow me," thought Bear. So Bear climbed higher and higher until at last he pulled himself up to the top. And huffing and puffing, he smiled with pride. And then he looked down and saw Shadow. Now Bear was very annoyed, so he went home and he got a hammer and some nails to nail his shadow to the ground. He hammered and hammered and hammered, but no matter how many nails he hammered in, he couldn't hammer his shadow down. The minute he stepped away, there was his shadow. "Well, if I can't nail him down," thought Bear, "maybe I can bury him." So he got his shovel and dug a hole. And when the hole was deep and wide, he let his shadow fall into the hole. And then Bear filled in the hole with dirt. And when he was finished, it was almost noon. The sun was high up in the sky, and Shadow was nowhere to be seen. At last, thought Bear, no more shadow. But now Bear was very tired, so he went inside and took a little nap. And while he slept, time passed, and the sun once again cast shadows everywhere. You see, when it was straight up in the sky, the shovel didn't have any shadow. But as the sun moved, the shadows grew and grew and grew. And when Bear got up and opened his door, he saw his shadow on the floor. "Oh, not you again," he exclaimed, and he slammed the door, hoping to lock Shadow inside. But Shadow was too quick. He was outside too. Said Bear. "How about this? If you let me catch a fish, I'll let you catch one too. Nod your head if you like this idea." So when Bear nodded his head, of course Shadow nodded his. It was a deal. So Bear went back to the pond and once again threw his line in the water. But by this time, the sun was in a different part of the sky, which made it easy for Shadow to keep his part of the deal. He didn't reflect into the pond. He was off to the side. And when Bear caught that big fish, Shadow caught one too. Can you ever catch your shadow? No. It's always with you, as long as the sun or the lights are on. Well, the last little activity we have for today is, well, with a little bear. In your packet, I had a cardstock bear. If you want, you can draw a little face on him, like this. And then you can go around to different parts of your house and play with the lights, or even take him outside and see how his shadow is cast, whether he casts a big shadow or a little shadow or no shadow whatsoever. And if you can't see Bear's shadow, well then, see if you can see one of your own. Thanks for joining me for all of our bear stories by Frank Asch. There are a lot more of them here at the library, so you can always come in and find out more about Bear and his, well, the fun activities that he does. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time we're shining a spotlight on someone who writes or illustrates children's books. We'll see you next time.